Hello, class. Um, Welcome. So this is the second part of this um, digital illustration, digital drawing part of the logos. And again, on the first one, we talked about how to work perhaps with the very linear logos, right? The follow the grid pretty accurately, or work with the very linear segments. Now, let's talk about what happens if perhaps you have a logo that has a bit more of curves of as part of the design, right? So I have this one right here that I'll be working with and showing you new commands and techniques in order to trace this digitally. All right. So how do we bring in images? And I'll be working on the same file, right? It's helpful to see the work together, but also to use the same layers that were used to generate the previous ones. So how do we bring in an image? Right, remember, so if you go ahead and type picture, enter, look for the image that you want to insert. Let's have it nope, here. Uh, there it is. All right, so go ahead and open that. First corner of picture, right? Can click there, and other corner of the picture, stay there for right now. And remember, I can move the image as I need. Actually, wanna talk about a few things, just very minimum, but how to change, for example, the opacity of this, and I'll show you guys the contrast right now. First, let's change this layer. So you select the object, change the layer to ref image. You can also, and you see that as soon as I automatically selected the object and changed its properties, I cannot do anything to it anymore because ref image is locked, which is the layer that we sent the reference image to. Now, I also want to talk about that you can change the an objects layer by selecting it, and underneath right here, you can select what layer that object belongs to. All right. What I wanted to show you guys is that if you select the image and you go to, is it here? Yes, it's here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. All right, you select the image and you go to this icon right here that says material. Right, so that's the standard one, which is your properties. But if you go ahead and click on the one on the right, which is material, has some sort of a paint tooth icon, right? There's and you scroll through these, right? That's the name of the material that it has, right? But right now it tells you that it's a picture and it's being referenced. You can even change the image, right? That's the address where the image texture can be found. Now you can send it to grayscale, apparently, which is very helpful. But I'll remove, I don't know, you can see how it kind of removes that yellow tint that it has. So I'll go ahead and send it to grayscale. But this part right here, the transparency, right? You see that I can play with that. Sometimes it helps. I'm gonna actually lower its transparency right there, or increase its transparency. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and move to my layer 1, which is the red, which is what I'm gonna use to be drawing. I'm going to rename this as pen 1. And how do we do this? You can either click on it, right? You click on a layer and then you do a second slow soft click. All right, try it. All right, and then you call this, for example. I like to be consistent, so like that, 2 and 1. All right, so that's the layer. It's active, right? Because it's checked. Now, for objects like this, right? Well, it's not really that easy to trace using, you know, kind of like how we did over here, right? That we counted the units, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we start drawing it on the side. This one is more of a trace on top of it, right? Kind of like what we were doing over here, right? We can bring over here, right? And primarily what we use, right? It's this control point curve, right? If you go ahead and select that. Now, right now, grid snap it's on, right? I know because my mouse and my cursor is acting weirdly, right? It's snapping to the grid. I'm actually going to deselect that, right? And let's look at what this curve does, right? And how it works, right? Because you see that, you know, um, well, it's following, right? This portion, right click and then to exit, right? Select that one and delete, right? And so what I'm doing again, or what I'm using, control point curve, right? And anytime that you click on a command, right, you see that it tells you the command right here, ellipse, for example, right? Polyline, you see that polyline. So for this one right here that you were using control point curve, you see that we can actually type curve, right? And it's nice to start, or helpful to start learning the commands um, early on right here. I'm going to right click right here. Right? So that's very helpful, and I can right click to repeat that right there, and I can use right my image on the back to trace this right here, and also using my um, drafting tools, right, such as Osnap. In this case, I could either snap to that end right there, but actually I want to study perhaps what happens if I bring that guy right there, right click, and then maybe I'll just do another line from there to there, right click. I kind of give it that different finish right there. Right click. I also like to work things a little bit past. I'll come back and clean that up, right? See how things are looking, right? And then do that. Right click to exit, right? Another one right here. Right click. So as you can see, this is way more forgiven, right? We're just dropping points, and I am looking at how this curve behaves once I click, because you're gonna see that once you start doing this, right? As you can see, the point doesn't necessarily go through where you click, but it's more of a reference for it, right? So it takes a little bit to get used to how it acts. So I'm going to right click to exit, right? So it just takes a little bit to get familiar with, right? Let's see what's going on right here. Maybe I'll do that right there, right click to repeat that right there. And start doing that. And you see that my pan or zoom are very helpful for this. Right? You don't want to start lose, right, the overall design of this. Remember, when we do things by hand, perhaps we're not fully thinking of all of these decisions, but when we begin working, right, the digital, oops, I don't want that selected. I'm gonna lock my reference image right there, and then again the command is curve, enter, do something like that. And this one right here, I think kind of wants to go like this, right, for right now. There, and then maybe there, right click. I like to, when I'm constructing this, I don't like to necessarily start defining these corners yet. Um, I don't know, like for example here, right, let's see, and again, this is because I already more or less remember how this tool is going to behave, right, and you know, but I like to still try different things when I'm defining these curves. Now, let's talk about, for example, this point right here that I do want to, you know, make sure that it meets this curve right here, the vertical. Right? I can type extend, right? Enter. Select that as the boundary object. Enter. That's the curve that I want to extend. Enter. Okay. And then now I can do trim, right? The trim command to maybe do some of this cleaning right here. Enter. Enter to repeat last command. Enter to select. Enter to delete. Enter to repeat trim. Select these two. Enter. Right. Delete those two. Mhm. Enter to repeat trim. These two, enter, enter to repeat trim, right, delete those two, enter, right, delete those two, enter, delete these two, right, and we have cleaned this up. Now you can further move these points right here, right? So it's also important or helpful to start um, seeing how the selection tool works as well, right? I don't know if you have noticed that if you click and drag, right, from the right to the left, right, your selection box looks dashed versus if you click from the left to the right, your selection box is solid, right? That just means that um, if you do from the right to the left, anything that it touches, right, will be selected. If you do from the left to the right, only the things that are within that box will be selected, right? Why I bring this, right? Well, because I just want to select that point right there. I can do that, and then I can move it, right? And if there's any points that, you know, we want to change, we can do so by manipulating one point or 2 points together in this case, right? Or well, yeah, as many as you need, right? So that was that, right? This took care of that letter right there. Now I can type curve again, right? And I can continue working, let's say, on this other one right here. So again, try to follow, right? And sometimes the question is, well, how many control points do I need, right? I mean, these that define the curve, right? I mean, because you can go either very dense like this, right? Uh, or at the same time, the more that you wait, right, and the more that they're spaced out, right, the harder that it is to define the curve as you have it drawn by hand. Going to undo, right, Control Z to go back. And well, the answer is it's not necessarily a recipe, right? But you have to again more or less feel how the curve develops and grows as you go along tracing, right, and following the outline of your hand drawn um, logo, right? So you'll have to get a feel for that. Now here, for example, right, this is where there's further or there's an opportunity to further define some of the you know, gestures that we did by per hand strokes, right, with the computer, right, kind of filling in these gaps that were left off by my pencil marks, right, and we can always come back and move some of the points if we see something that we are not particularly fans of. All right, but so I continue, right, tracing this right here, and this is what defines your curves, right? Those points that you click. Now, when there's very sharp turns, that's where I do recommend that you do add more points, right? So that you can further define that sharp turn, right? The same, either going in or out, convex or concave, right? And I'll bring that out right there, right click, right click to repeat last command, right? Here, for example, actually, maybe I'm gonna space them out closer together. This, there, right there, maybe there. Right click. Okay, right click to repeat the last command. Right. There's a few dogs in the neighborhood that Elvis has some sort of vendetta with, that they always bark at each other very, very aggressively. So you'll probably keep hearing that as they walk past our house. So anyway, so you can see that there's a lot of editing that I'm doing kind of here, right? I mean, this starts reading differently from what I had by pencil, right? But it's because I'm trying to see what works best. And I'm not very happy with how it looks, right? So perhaps what I can do is I can either start from scratch, right? That would be select that and delete it. But I can show you that you can also type line, for example. Let's say that this part right here is working for me, this bottom one, but this top one isn't. I can type trim, and then with the line that I give myself as a guide, enter, delete that part right there, like that, and delete it. And then I can start from that point right there, curve, using my object snaps right here. And again, familiarize with the object snaps, right? I mean, end, near, point. You don't need all of these turned on all the time, right? But it is very helpful to understand where and how to snap to them, right? So here we go. So let's see, maybe I can, you know what, actually I think it would work best. Alright, so I'm not liking this other segment right here. Trim this right there, delete that. What if I start from the top, right? Right? And then we work our way down. See how that goes. Oops, sorry, not polyline. You see the polyline, it gives me the outline, but it's in a segmented way. Right? It's this linear. That's not what I want. So it's like the curve. Enter. There we go. So now tracing this right here. See, going there. Going there. See now, this is meeting better. So maybe I'm going to bring it there. No, put it there. Here. Right click. I want to come back and clean that up. Right click to repeat that. Come over here. And yes, we can snap that. Yes, I think I like this a little better. Right, so, but even some of these points, I think I like to move a little bit more there and there. Now what happened here? See if we can type trim, select these two right here, and can we delete that and this? There we go, enter. And then now we have that right there. Okay. Okay. Sure. Let's go ahead and do the top parts right there. So I can type curve, right? That right there. Right there. trim, select F2, delete that, enter to repeat trim, clean that up, alright, enter, trim, F2, right click, curve, close this thing out, there, trim, clean it up a little bit, to repeat trim, object trim, right click, and from here what I like to do is I like to see it without the image on the back, so I type copy, right? So again, for example, well, never mind, that's off, right? But we can copy and move. I hold shift to make a copy of it, right, with ortho on, and we can see the final result right there. Which then, once it's out of the image right here, perhaps I can find certain moments, right? So I can select these two lines right there, or that full line right there. Actually, let's do something first. Let's type join, right? Let's join all of these line segments right here, so that they become one single outline, and we can get its points, right? So now that I select that, I get all of those points, and then now I can select one or more points, and I can, you know, keep moving some of these. If now, for example, I want to massage this a little bit, right? Now that I'm outside of the image or the reference image on the background, I can start doing some of that. I would like maybe to this curve to be a little more pronounced. So maybe I move this back out a little bit, this one, and I think, or no, there we go. Just move this a little bit, move this out a little bit. Right. I can further explore, right? Let's say I make another copy of this. Right, enter from there to there, right? This points right here. So let's say that, let's say that I want to make this sharper right here. I can do that, right? Let's say that I do now another curve, right? And let's say that I want this to be kind of more like that. Let's see how that would look. So I can then see if I type extend, it's going to reach, right? It's not going to reach. It's telling me right there, the software, that if I type extend, they're never going to meet, but I can use connect, right, to connect that with that, and actually they're meet over here. That's interesting. What happens if I copy this little line segment right here, and then I also bring it somewhere over here, right there, and then I type connect, right, to connect this right there, and then I can select that line right there and delete it, type trim right here, that right there, select that and delete it, type trim, these two, and delete these two right there. So subtle changes, right? Subtle changes to what's going on, you know, there and there, but I think it makes a difference, right? Like kind of like those tails, right? They're moving like that. So it's you can see how using the curves you have much more freedom, right? Especially for this strokes right there. Now the key right here, the secret, is to learn, right, how to use this curve tool, right, to get these turns right here, right? So how many points to actually use, right, without giving yourself too much work, but also not simplifying it so much that you actually lose or do not get those curves, right, that actually define your work at this moment right here. See, we can start doing that right there. Additionally, you do have the circle and the arc tools, right? That maybe I can show you guys right here. So the arc tool right there, if I select it first, right, center of the arc, right? Let's say there, start of arc right there, and then end of the arc right there. And start doing some of those lines right there. Now, if I expand the arc menu, right, we have that there's actually a different ways to define arcs. In this case, we start by specifying the center, but as you can see, it's hard to define the center of these arcs right here, right, because we don't really know. But what if we actually define the start and the end of the arc? Right, let's see, for example, that and that right there, and then we do that right there. So that was the second option right here, the start and point on arc, right? So we define the start, the end, and then a point on such arc right there. Try it because these arc tools are very helpful. However, again, it's the, the power again comes in knowing when to use which, right? So and then so for example, on top of that, we have now a start, point on arc, and then end. Let's see, I don't know if I've tried that one before. So start, a point on the arc, right? And then we can do now the end, right there, right? So technically I could, let's see, I'm going to move this right here, bring it over here. I could potentially use also just arc segments, right? Now we're gonna see that we might run into some moments where we're not really sure what to do, right? So for example, I start at the end right there, the, the beginning, the end right here, and I can bring that right there. Now you see that what happens is that this curve right there is not defined just by one single arc, right? Or at least from the same um, diameter of a circle, right? This is actually made up of of a number of arc segments, right? What do I mean? Well, if I select my tool right there, maybe there's a beginning and end right there, and I can do that right there, right? And then repeat, and then I can do another one, maybe like that, then another one, kind of like that. But you see, I don't like to get these kinks right there. That looks kind of silly to me, right? I like them to be flow as continuous as possible, right? So, but again, it all depends on what you're working with. Perhaps you were working with circular segments or very defined half circles or quarters of circles, right? That it can become very helpful. Okay, so this is the more organic way of tracing, right? Here in Rhino, which is with your curve right there, tool. But again, the power of this becomes of the combination of them, right? So uh, try it and let me know if there's any questions. I think for right now, this should be enough to trace most of what I've seen in class so far. Don't forget to save your work, file save. And later on we'll be talking on how to export these and add color on Illustrator and finalize the design of this. All right guys, any questions, just let me know.